Howdy ho guys, and welcome back to another Bojan vlog. How are you doing? So, in today's transmission, I want to, from the lovely confines of my car once again, with my impromptu light source. You missed that, right? I wanted to kind of extend on what I was talking about last week. And as such, the previous few parts, I wanted to kind of like wrap all of that up nicely into an entry that may very well help you, in your own life. And it's obviously a very universal topic, that we all struggle with, right? And that is, how do you motivate yourself, right? How do you motivate yourself? Say you have a pursuit, you have a dream, right? You want to become successful. You want to build a social enterprise that helps the world, let's just say, whether that be through facilitating positive social change. Maybe you want to change the way that the school systems work. Maybe you want to change the way that money works. Maybe you want to change the way that, companies do things, the way that the kind of economic landscape looks, or it could be you want to look at the education system. You want to you understand that the education system as it stands right now, I can't vouch for this exactly because, I haven't been in the education system for many years, but maybe you want to facilitate, a school system that actually, builds on the natural strengths of children as they grow up, and to teach them valuable life skills that we may or may not have, in most cases didn't, kind of pick up before we were kind of slammed into the whole adulthood thing, right? Maybe you want to be an artist, I want to become a musician, I want to master. I want to, I play the piano. I also make music. I'm a producer, composer. And I want to use that to create, art, basically, that inspires and heals people. For every Drake there is, I want there to be, for every 100 Drakes, I want there to be at least one Bo, who makes music that, it's not as sexy, maybe, not as kind of badass, cool, hip, but maybe is that to an extent, but is predominantly healing and soulful and spiritual, all of that stuff, right? Maybe you want to be an artist. Maybe you want to create works of art that really kind of get people to question themselves, to question the nature of reality, to understand the plight of a certain group of people. Maybe you're more of a documentative artist. You're a photographer, and you really want to kind of get into the lives of real people and show the struggles and the joy and the pain and all of that, right? Maybe you want to be a storyteller. It could be you could want to be a writer. A writer who tells stories about people that you meet in your travels, wonderful feats of human strength and compassion and consciousness. Maybe you want to help people in a more practical way, teaching people how to be successful, teaching people how to, manage their happiness, manage their emotions, whatever it might be. My guess is that you watching this, you have some kind of a pursuit you're on, right? And I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm motivated. Sometimes I'm hey, let's do this. Let's do vlog entries and let's talk about things that I care about, and let's make this piece of music. Let's get better at piano and be able to play this music that's so delicious and so soulful, and beautiful. Let's sing and let's do something. Let's be on this path of the heart to create our heart's work. Sometimes I feel like that. I feel so inspired. I'm like, oh yay, but other times I don't. Sometimes I'm just like, I can't be asked. Like, I wish I could be asked, but like, I don't feel so well. Like, I just had to talk with family or friends, and like, they may not have meant it, but like, they said something that kind of discouraged me. I watched other artists or business people who have it together, and like, they've done so much, and it's just like, I feel kind of insignificant, like, kind of compared with what they've done. Sometimes, yeah, I just can't be bothered, and it's like, how do you motivate yourself, right? How do you motivate yourself? Well, my friend, I hope that I can kind of contribute towards that today. Disclaimer, I don't profess to be a master motivator, even for myself, right? Motivation is a very complex and highly personal thing, It's something that people don't look into enough. Motivation is super important when it comes to anything in life, right? But like, people tend to want to focus on like mechanics and techniques. Not to say that's wrong, but it's just that kind of thing maybe is a bit easier to teach, whereas motivation is very, very complex and personal, and yeah, and so, if anything, I can promise that in this entry that I can at least get that ball rolling, the motivation ball for you, right? So, as I said in previous entries, right, I talked about I talked about the importance of ownership, like specifically the previous episode, right? I talked about owning yourself, because when you're in a space of like, I'm just not successful enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not curious enough, I'm not extroverted enough, and like, you're kind of like, you just feel the crushing kind of inadequacy, within, and you're just displeased with yourself, that's putting it lightly, but like, and I basically, gave the perspective that perhaps the reason behind that is because you have not found ownership for yourself yet, right? There's a lot of good stuff, you discover some stuff and you're like, why did I keep this from the world? Like, I'm an artist, yeah, like, you could say that maybe that's partly immature, partly selfish, but like, at the same time, it's like, but it's beautiful, and like, why wouldn't I want to share it with the world, right? Some of it's beautiful, some of it's not so beautiful, sometimes like, you just like weird things, you discover that you're a bit of a weirdo, you have weird thoughts, like whatever it might be, right? And so like, you're into anime or video games, or like, weird nerdy otaku stuff, and you're like, that's not even the thick of it, like, you discover kind of lots of things about yourself, and and along this journey we kind of are continually like owning ourselves. This they say that this is a journey not necessarily of discovery, but of revealing. Like, we in the quest for novel insights on the world, on ourselves, we learn things, we learn things about ourselves, but then we realize that those things have been part of us all along. And so, you realize that as you kind of go on this journey, that like, a lot of it is learning to own yourself. That is the gift of the journey, is like really looking yourself, and like, in the midst of pain and comparison and validation seeking and all of this stuff, we learn that who we are is who we are, and we ought to love that, and that there is an untapped potential for inspiration and mastery and empowerment and just love in who we are, and that the sooner that we embrace, ourselves and own ourselves, the sooner that we can bring that into the world and like enlighten the world, if you will. To provide our gifts to the world, you know. And that is the journey. It's beautiful, right? But like sometimes you don't feel motivated, right? And like, but the thing is that like that's actually part of motivation. So before anything, I want you to think about that, right? And this whole motivation thing, like for this entry, I want you to just stick with me, right? And to be aware of your sticking points, you know, like the emotions that you feel that stop you from being motivated, you know, like they could be like that, you know, I'm just lazy, you know, I'm just not good enough, I'm too much of a little bitch, like I'm too, like I complain a lot, you know, and like I'm just lazy, you know, my circumstances aren't so great, you know, the way that I was brought up wasn't so great, you know, whatever it might be. I want you to be with that, right? But also realize, or rather that I want you to kind of slow down in this entry and really be with all of those things and all of those feelings, right? To be aware of them, but to just sit with them, right? Because motivation is personal, like I say, it's different for everyone. Everyone has different kind of motivation matrices, if you will, you know, like different people are motivated by different things, and it's highly personal. But I would also say that motivation is it's a mental game, you know, if you will, right? Life is about playing the game with yourself, right? But like, it's about learning to be with what you fear, what holds you back, and to slowly realize that those things are okay, first and foremost, and B, aren't perhaps as terrifying as you have traditionally thought them of, right? But the key is, I want you to just be with your own insecurities, your own kind of roadblocks towards being motivated, right? And just be with me as we kind of traverse this thing, and we kind of drag slowly and organically the motivation within ourselves, you know. So the first thing, like I mentioned, is ownership, right? So, and that also translates as being honest, right? So it means that you have to, so think about the things that you want to achieve. Think about the kind of person that you want to be, right? Write it down if you need to, you know, or keep it in your mind. And then think about the things that you actually do. Think about the things that you know, whether it be procrastinating or like escaping or doing nothing, you know. Think about those things too, right? And I want you to keep this at the forefront of your consciousness, because there's a third category, of course. There's the category of things that kind of come into your consciousness that you kind of have to deal with, basically, like just to put all of that in a broad kind of category. It's like there's things that you want to do in terms of like, I want to achieve these things, this is who I want to become, you know, so future like kind of goal type thoughts, you know, and considerations and visions. And then the second one is what you actually do, you know, like just things that you like to do, whether or not you accept them. Some of them you may accept, you know. Some of them may be like basically like guilty pleasures, you know, things that you're like, maybe addictions, you know, maybe escapist tendencies, you know, things like that. So those are the main two. And then there's obviously, like I said, a third category, which is like commitments, basically, responsibilities, you know, like having to pay the bills, having to be with your family, having to be with your friends, having to like deal with administration, bureaucracy, and all of that stuff, right? Things that you have to sort out. So 3 categories, but I want you to focus on the first 2 specifically, right? And this becomes the forefront of your kind of your thoughts in terms of like who you are, right? Because the third category, obviously, you have to deal with, but like anything after that, honestly, is a distraction, right? it's like, again, like life is so like unpredictable and vast that like you just can't predict what might happen. Sometimes like shit happens, or like you connect with things that you wouldn't that you thought you wouldn't connect with, and either you love them and you're like, oh my god, I discovered something completely new that I love, you know, or something comes up, you know, it could be positive or negative really, but to be honest, those things, they don't really need your conscious attention, you know. They might happen, you know, so I guess this is a fourth category, which is like unexpected things, like things that you completely did not account for, but like they come up, whether they be positive or negative, right? Don't focus on those yet, but they will come up, and when they do come up, then you can be present with them and see what they can offer you in terms of lessons, value, you know, but that's not kind of your immediate concern right now. So our immediate concern is what we want to do and what we actually do, because those two things are super important to us. One represents our kind of desire in the form of self-amelioration, you know, using a fancy word there, which basically self-improvement. So like, we all need to have something that we want. It's natural when you think about it, you know, like you kind of want things that you don't already have, but you think are going to be good for you, and you think are going to be good for other people, right? So obviously this requires a degree of honesty. Both of these require, you know, some honesty. So you have to ask yourself, you have to like have something, right? And like, I say you have to have something, but like, I'm sure that if you're watching this, you have an idea of the kind of thing that you want to be doing. You have a goal, you know. I'm just gonna assume that, right? And then there's also the things that you do, right? So yeah, so like I said, I want you to keep these at the forefront of your consciousness, because these are the things that really call for your conscious attention, right? So ownership is one, right? So ownership or honesty is basically when you become more and more aware of these two dimensions of your life, what you want to do, which may change, and what you already do, which can also change, right? Like, at first, and this was true in my journey, you kind of don't have that much conscious control over it, because you're like, you don't know who you are, you don't know what you really want, you're not too cognizant of what you do on a day-to-day basis, and even if you kind of are, you feel no power towards changing any of it. So initially, we all kind of start off scrambling in the dark, right? But like eventually, once you start to kind of gain more awareness, so like you start to realize, okay, so like I've been doing this, I've done this in the past, you know, like I tried photography, then I moved on to animation, you know, I tried this business, you know, which was like a sales-based business, you know, commerce, basically e-commerce, and then I tried another business that was more kind of consultation, you know, and maybe those things weren't entirely what I wanted, but because I have the experience of those, like I realized that like I do want to do business, right? So I realized that I was creative, you know, because I've done all these things in the past, like music, writing, art, like visual art, drawing, you know, these vlog entries, right? So I realized through doing all of these things and striving to do all of these things that I am a creative. At the time, I was very, very like self-doubtful. I was like, I can't seem to find the one thing that I can do. You know, like I need to find one thing that I can do and focus on. It's like, yeah, you know, that's a legitimate kind of consideration, but like you learn that the more important thing is like, what is the kind of trend in the things that you want to do, right? Because in life you kind of have to be flexible anyway, right? Because you never know, like you could lose interest in something, or like it could, or the industry could collapse or whatever, right? So like what I'm trying to say, you know, I don't necessarily mean like you have to be so, like you have to be paranoid about it. I mean like don't, like be abundant. You know, I used to think of my I used to think of my I used to think of my kind of scatterbrainness and like having multiple interests was a detriment. But over the years, I've come to see that side of me, like that eclectic dilettante side of me, as positive, because it means that I have the flexibility and the facility to be able to like do many different things, right? And that kind of amplifies, if I allow it to, you know, to like my creativity, right? And so you find, you basically go on the path and you try, you know, all of these things, and then you basically find, you understand on a deeper level what you're about in terms of what you want to do with yourself, you know. And you realize it's not so narrow, right? You realize that like you could do many different things because you've discovered, you know, the kind of deeper essence of like what your talents are, you know, what you might potentially offer to the world, right? So that's one thing you do, and then also you kind of learn, you become more aware of what you like to do, even if it's, particularly if it's things that aren't quote unquote productive, right? So like you learn that you like to waste a lot of time watching, you know, random YouTube videos about cats and like pranks and ASMR and makeup and whatever else, right? You know, you learn that you like to occasionally drink alcohol. You learn that you like to smoke a lot, you know, or you like to play sports or sit around talking to your friends or whatever it might be, you know, and, you know, you, I don't know, you like, you know, you spend a lot of time in front of the mirror, you know, like choosing outfits and putting on makeup. You spend a lot of time jacking off, like, you know, like, hey, you know, like you discover it, right? And like, and like, you know, as you go along the journey, you kind of learn this about yourself. And this allows you to be more accurate in terms of your ownership, because initially you're just grasping. You're grasping for like, okay, so Bo Jinjin, you're telling me, right, that like I need to find something like a purpose basically, and I also need to kind of think about what I do, right? But A, you may not really know, to be honest. You may be a bit too inexperienced, you may be too young. Not to say like it's necessarily, like, you know, like inexperience necessarily correlates with youth, but like, you know, you may not be on that part of the journey yet, and so like try different things, try things, you know, like the thing that you have in your mind right now, try it, you know, or at least have that as like, okay, I can potentially do this, right? And yeah, it's hard to get started, but like I would say that if you're someone who is on the cusp, you're like, I get what you're saying, Bo, I really do, and I really want to do it, like I really want to. I don't like the way what like society has handed to me in terms of my destiny, in terms of like having to get a job and having to start a family and just doing all of that normal stuff. Like it doesn't really resonate with me, and I resonate with what you say, but where do I get, how, like, what do I do? Like, how do I get started? Well, think about the things that you liked as a kid is one way, you know, like think about things that have afforded you success in the past. So like I have been a lifelong musician, you know. I'm not super talented like some people, you know, but like I would say that I'm relatively talented, and I have been doing it most of my life. I've played in orchestras, you know, I did music A level, you know, I got to A level standard, you know, I've done a bit of production over the years, you know, and so like, so that has been a success point for me. So that's why I chose music. And then I realized that I also had a talent for writing, right? So you kind of dig out these things. What have you done in the past that you enjoyed and that you were kind of good at, right? And then pick one of those things and then just give it a shot, you know, just be like, yeah, try it out. Try it out. because there's a possibility that it could become your calling. You know, like I say, it's different for everyone. Success is different for everyone, right? And it could, it could very well be that you try that thing that you wanted to do. You tried playing sports, or being whatever, right? Even, being a doctor, like even something standard, like being a doctor or being like a lawyer, or being a games developer, right? In an indie game dev, man, awesome, like you never know, like it could become your thing, if you try it out and like you're like, wow, like this is fucking awesome, I want to do this for the rest of my life, then that's awesome. That could very well happen, so don't discount it, But anyway, so so that's what you do, right? You do that, right? And then you slowly start to gain visibility over who you are, what you like, your blind spots, your strengths, your weaknesses, and that's part of it, right? Like I said, is self-awareness and self-ownership, right? Like I mentioned in the previous entry. The other part is a bit more practical. So, okay, Bo, I understand the philosophy of it. Like, you have to be conscious of your strengths and your weaknesses and, like, what you actually like, and to be super honest about that. But how do I be motivated? Like, what's the point? Like, when's the crunch, right? And it's like, the other component to this is discipline, right? And as soon as I say that word, I'm sure I am like, oh, discipline, right? But like the thing is, right, is you baby step it, right? So I have mentioned in previous entries that I have a process called back to basics that I employ, which is basically something that I use to when I have I find myself in a rut, or I kind of lose momentum and motivation, and because shit happens in life, right, that makes you lose your momentum, right? This is what I do to get myself back into the swing of this, right? And let's be honest, right? Let's validate all of our feelings. Like, discipline is hard. Like, willpower is hard. It's hard, and that's all there is to it, right? In the sense that, like, so like one of the things I like to do in my back to basics process is like jogging, right? I go out to the park next to my flat and I go for a jog, right? Not even like a brisk jog, but like just like a very, very slow jog, right? Just a jog that's not walking, power walking, but like, which is more comfortable? Going out and jogging or sitting at home? Obviously one is less exerting on you, right? So, but but let me kind of take this concept further, right? In my own experience, I have kind of realized that the first step is the most crucial, right? So the first step to back to basics, which is basically like kind of doing the practical component of like doing things. If you want to be a writer, you got to start writing, right? If you want to be a musician, you got to start practicing, right? But what if I don't feel like practicing or writing? What if I don't feel like working on my business right now? And it's like, okay, so back to basics. What this is, you pick one thing. You pick one thing that you can do consistently, and you start with that. And the thing you pick is the thing that is super easy for you. Super easy for you. What is something that you love to do that is super easy, but it has to be productive, right? So you might have to kind of like play around and search internally and try things to find this one thing that you can do. Because for me, it's speaking. It's doing a vocal diary entry, right? That to me is this one thing. It's this one thing that got me. It's my one thing, but I wasn't born with this, right? I had to kind of like, over the years when I was journaling and stuff like that, like I discovered that I liked to do these entries where I talk to myself on my phone. And to me, it's super easy. It's like, it's so easy. I actually look forward to it. Like, it's like breathing to me, like expressing myself, like like this, right? It's so fun and easy, right? The importance is it has to be easy. It has to be so easy that like, it has to be the same as like breathing basically for you, where it's like, you're like, and it'll be fun, right? Because when I do these entries, I can talk, express myself, I can talk about any weird shit that's in my head, I can express my feelings, I can scream, I can shout, I can laugh, I can cry, and it's just so fun for me because I get to express myself, right? But it's productive because I get to express myself. I get to formulate my thoughts. I get to really be with myself, be present with my feelings, and resolve all of this in action. So for me, it's like the gate for me. It's like the doorway, is doing these vocal diary entries, right? So for you, if you don't already have something like this, find that thing. Something that's super easy, super fun, but is also productive. So unfortunately, not watching YouTube videos, not like whatever, not playing games, but like it has to be something that's like productive, and if you're more kind of expressive in a verbal sense or an intellectual sense, then I would recommend some form of journaling. It could be vocal diary entries, it could be written journals, right? If you're more physically inclined, play a sport, or even play a game, a video game that's competitive, right? So like I mentioned Tekken 7, like I've been playing that recently. If you're super into that game and you really have a lot of fun playing that game, play that game and learn stuff about the game, right? There's something that you can do, right, that's super easy for you, super easy, requires no effort. I could talk for hours. Like literally, not kidding, but literally. Sometimes I have to stop myself, like because I just talk and talk and talk and talk, and like it's effortless for me. So that's why I picked it, because it's not write a song or write a book or do a piece of art, or go out and create like a photo album, like portfolio. It's like, don't worry about that. We'll get there eventually, right? This is something that gets the ball rolling. You see? So pick that one thing. That one practice that is super easy for you. It could be meditation, but except like you kind of like, you have to make it into a practice though. It really, to be honest, it doesn't really matter what it is. Like as long as it has some kind of a beneficial effect, so like it's either productive or like it's healing, it kind of like detaches you and unplugs you from like, internet and stuff like that. But it has to be effortless, right? And once you start to like, and then you can do that. I do it almost every day, honestly, like, because it's so fun and it's so productive, right? Maybe I need to stop doing it so much, right? But we'll get to that in a second, right? So like you start with that, right? And then you have to like identify the most important areas of your life. And these are actually, unfortunately, or fortunately, quite standard, right? One is physical health. You need to be physically healthy, right? Because sometimes when you're sat there and you're depressed and you're miserable and you're like, I fucking hate myself and I'm worthless, maybe you can't think yourself out of that. Maybe it's because you haven't done any exercise and you've been sitting at home all day. Your body's like enter the state of like decay because you just sat there the whole day, right? Maybe you haven't eaten any greens and you don't have vitamins and other things like that floating around your bloodstream, and you've been eating sugar and stuff like that. And it's like, it's a factor, particularly as you get older. So like maybe if you're younger, like it doesn't really matter. Like you just have energy for days, right? But like when you're my age, 28, right? You start to notice that like when you eat junk food, it tastes great, right? But you feel terrible afterwards, or you feel like less energetic. You feel more lethargic. And when you eat greens and you make green juices, and you smoothies and things like that, and fruits, and just more live, raw, natural food, you have more energy. You feel less stressed. You feel more loving. But the key here is not to overextend, right? Because one thing I've learned, I'm sure something that you know, is that like you can't, like you go on a diet, then what happens on a diet? You go strong for like 2 weeks to a month, maybe even a couple months, but then eventually you crash and burn. You know, and it might not be a fault of your own. It could be someone who's like, hey, eat this donut, and it's like you're like, I don't want to. I've been dieting, and it's like you cave to peer pressure because it's like your body's so starved, right? I'm gonna be controversial, I guess, and say that find a balance. Make sure that you eat healthy. Or like, you give that a threshold, give that a minimum. Say, I'm gonna eat salad 4 days a week. I'm going to drink water 5 days a week. I'm going to eat whatever 5 days a week. I'm going to introduce a new type of food every week because I read a Steve Pavliner entry recently and it initially triggered me, but then like I saw the value of it, which is like you have to eat new stuff. You have to eat foods you've never eaten before to kind of keep your kind of nutritional profile varied and stuff like that. So like obviously it's not practical to like do that every single fucking day, but like what you can do is you can make it like eat eat something new every week or every 2 weeks or every month, right? The same with exercise. I only force myself, and then at that point it's not even forcing because it's really light and laid back. Like I only force myself to jog once a week, and if I feel up to it, I do it twice a week, and that's it. It just so happens that like the job that I do, little side gig that I do is like it's quite physical, so that's good. But like that's it. Go for walks. But like that's what I like about doing vocal diaries is you can go for a walk, right? So I recommend something like that because it has the compound effect of like giving you a bit of physical exercise, going out, that kind of thing. Getting really dark. So yeah. You don't need to become a vegan. You don't need to become like an athlete level exerciser, right? All you need is a bare minimum, and you can decide what that is for you, as long as it is a minimum. So this is the true definition of discipline. It's not hard, it's not like self-flagellation, it's not self-punishment. It's not being a masochist, right? It's finding the level, the threshold, where you can do it consistently, but it's manageable. That's it. Then you can do whatever the hell you want the rest of the time. As long as you've done your exercise, you can watch however many YouTube videos you want. As long as you've eaten your salad or your green juice or drank your green juice for the day, you can eat donuts if you feel like it. You can have KFC. It doesn't matter. Or rather, not that it doesn't matter. Like it's like that's okay. That's okay, because guess what? Your body needs to procrastinate once in a while. Your body needs to have comfort foods every so often. It's actually healthy. It's consulting your feelings cycle. It's allowing yourself, right? So you need a balance, and this is what I was talking about in the previous entries. Anyway, my phone's about to die, and more or less, I've given you kind of a window into what, in terms of thinking about how to motivate yourself, but also like how to, and I know, and how to practically do it. And I know maybe I didn't tie, like, yeah, my camera's about to die, and I haven't tied this up properly, maybe, but you then do that, right? And once you've established discipline, and once you are conscious about what you do, then the motivation will come. The key distinction is that you're not forcing yourself to do anything. It's like a negotiation. This is why I said that, like, success is like playing a game with yourself, because it is. You realize the things that you really cannot control, even things such as being addicted to things, or like escaping and like eating comfort foods. It's like, what you can do, you can do it eventually, right? The key is to like, when you do it, you're like, okay, I've done what I need to do. I can fully enjoy this. Do you see the difference? Like I said in previous entries as well, it's playing the game with yourself, but the game of life is the long game. And when you realize that, you'll find your motivation. So if you're procrastinating right now, don't be hard on yourself. Think about it. Think about what you're doing. Think about where you want to be. But then, like, do something different. Do that thing that is so easy to you, but it's productive, right? And I assure you, even if you can't climb Mount Everest, because we all want to climb Mount Everest in the areas that we want to improve, you will find your motivation. You will do something, and you'll get back on it. It's a long game. It's staying motivated. It's not necessarily what you do every single day. It's just making sure that you keep going. So cool. I hope, guys, that was insightful. I hope it was helpful. And I wish you the best of luck in what you're trying to do. And I love you. We can do this. So cool. As always, I will catch you guys in the next entry. I hope you're doing well. If you have any comments, please feel free to leave them. Let's go. Keep going, guys. Peace out.